welcome to the Goya Gatherings Podcast, a serene and inspiring space where the worlds of yoga and wellness converge. Every episode is a journey into the heart of yoga, offering you deep insights, uplifting stories, and practical wisdom. Our conversations are designed to inspire your journey and illuminate your path to well-being. Please remember that the views expressed by our guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Goya Gatherings or its hosts.
Welcome to the Goya Gatherings Podcast. My name is Michelle, and I'm part of the leadership team here at Goya. Today's guest on the podcast is Courtney Anna Mason. Courtney is a transformational mentor, Reiki and energy work teacher, psychic medium, and multidimensional energy worker devoted to guiding others through profound awakening and lasting inner freedom. In this episode, we're diving into a powerful and expansive conversation around intuitive abilities, energy work, and psychic development, and how these aren't gifts reserved for a select few, but accessible tools that can support healing, clarity, and deep personal transformation for anyone willing to explore them. This is going to be a truly eye-opening conversation, and I'm very excited for you all to meet Courtney. So let's begin. Courtney, my sweet friend, welcome to the Goya Gatherings Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so excited to have you. As our listeners will likely not know, you and I have actually known each other for quite a few years now. And I was trying to think about when it was that we first met. And I can't remember. It's funny how we date things in our life, like pre or post COVID. But I want to say that it was 2019, right before COVID, no?
I think it was 2020.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
I remember.
Well, I could be wrong.
Fair.
Sometime in that time frame.
I love it. And I was thinking about it, as I'm, going through like all of the information about you and brushing up on everything. I think that was somewhere in the beginnings of like your nomadic adventures.
Yeah.
Had you been
really
anywhere
started
before we
changing.
met? We met on Isla Mujeres in Mexico. So yeah, probably COVID times then, 2020. And was that your first like adventure into the nomad life, or had you already been doing it for a bit?
Well, it was definitely like that year was when everything changed for me. It was when I fully decided to go into full-time what I'm doing now instead of part-time, while also being a hair colorist in Los Angeles and trying to do both. And so it was kind of the beginning of like what the life I have now is. Like that's when it started. Yeah. So nomadic living definitely it kind of started to happen in that year. Maybe
Big
a little bit
transformation for many.
before. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It was like, whoa, lights on. Hello, this is what's happening now. Change it up.
I love
Yeah.
that. I love that. Would you mind, sharing just a little bit about maybe your journey into, everything that you offer, the Reiki, intuitive development, mediumship, and all of that? I'm curious to know if it was the, transformational experience of the COVID pandemic that opened that door, or if it was something more. Did it start before? Tell us all about the journey.
Well, just to answer about like, did it open the door? I feel like that door was open, but 2020 was the year that like kind of kicked me through it. It was like, you can't stand in the doorway anymore. Like you've got to make a decision and do something for yourself. The journey's kind of been lifelong in a lot of ways because I would definitely say that I've always been a medium, and I've always been psychic. I've always had a connection to these things, which, if we go back to the root of it, I actually had a near-death experience when I was about 3, and I drowned in a hot tub. And I told my mom I saw Jesus when I came back. I don't know who I saw. I don't remember my near-death experience, but there's been a lot of research about people who have them and them being connected to not only like the spirit world, but to energy and to these things around us that are more subtle for others initially. So I do believe that things really started then. But It was probably about 10 years ago when it was about 10 years ago when I first got my first Reiki attunement.
Mm.
And that really changed a lot for me because I had already been receiving a lot of energy work and been really curious, but it was like, okay, this opened a whole new world of sensitivity within me, bringing me back to myself and really to the energies and the subtleties around me. And that continued to build curiosity. You know, my abilities came way back online. I started to get to know them, started to build them more with curiosity, you know, not necessarily thinking I was going to be doing this for other people at the time. It was more so like, okay, this is a journey for me. But 2020 is when I kind of got kicked through that door. That's
Mhm.
when things really changed. And it was like, you can't keep living the way that you used to. I attribute a lot of that to the fact that my job working in salons in Los Angeles got shut down repeatedly. And there was times where I couldn't go into my workaholic ways and just work, 12-hour days, 5 days a week. I couldn't do that anymore. And it was like, okay, who are you really? And that revealed so much to me because the distractions were gone. So that's when I really decided, like, okay, we've got to do something about this. And I did something that I don't know if I would recommend to everyone.
Oh, this is going
Um,
to be good.
because it was really challenging and intense, but I completely walked away from my hair career that I built for 11 years, found amazing people that I fully trusted to send my clients to, and just decided I wasn't going to be doing it anymore. Um, I didn't have a transitional period. I went from doing readings and energy work at home out of my little apartment that I converted into a studio part-time, really curiously, didn't really have like a solid base of clients to completely going 100% all into that. And it's a huge initiation, and I knew that it would be. I don't know if I recommend it to everybody, but for anybody who feels that to where they're like, I'm ready to just totally blow the lid off of my life, my number one thing that I would say is just make sure that you really believe in what you're doing because there'll be tons of tests and tons of challenges and parts of yourself that you have to be willing to meet. It's worth it. It's
I
worth
love
it.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. As somebody who did something kind of similar, or followed a similar path, I can totally appreciate and agree with that. I am curious, um, when you say that you just, took a leap of faith, especially based on like your intuitive practices, was there like anything in particular that you can remember that was just kind of this like, I recognize that it's maybe like a knowing or, but I'm curious if it's like a feeling or, if you can remember the experience of what it was that felt like, okay, this is what I have to do and this is the right thing to do.
Yeah. I would say that there were quite a few moments and they kind of like built on top of each other. And it's almost like, I guess a way I could describe it is I had this time away to where I could really explore myself. And when I wasn't working, I was going deep into my own practices, going deep into yoga, meditation, my self practice with Reiki, with developing mediumship and psychic abilities, right? And that brought me back to what I would call like my true self, my connecting me with my soul. And when I went back to these things that were what I would say misaligned,
Hmm.
I could feel it so strongly and stronger than I ever had because I had the contrast of what it was actually like to be in my truest essence versus doing something that I'd just been doing for a long time.
That's powerful. I like how you use the contrast as a way of like really recognizing that it was the right path, that where you were going forward and like leaving behind the what I can only imagine is a very stark contrast, like the you know Los Angeles hair colorist, go go go, fill your calendar. um Definitely a different modality than what you're in now. I can imagine how stark that contrast must be. And I can appreciate that it wasn't necessarily some like big, huge, like aha moment of going in and trying to, or like seeing what it felt like to get into that more intuitive side and let that be the work. But I really like that you went back into it a little bit, because I mean, when we have these skills that, there's a very good chance that we've paid for, we don't usually just hop out of the womb as a colorist, right? So, you develop these skills over time and you have them, and they're a great skill to have in your toolbox. But I love that you went back into it, tried to like, give it a little bit of a go again, and just like, it just wasn't there for you. That connection just didn't click.
Yeah, I should also add that, right around COVID times, I had a pretty devastating breakup that just like shook me to my core. Like there was a lot of elements to it that was just like really challenging. A lot of pain, betrayal, things like this. And that was also a huge catalyst, I feel like, for breaking all of these things down and looking at my life differently and being like, how do you actually want to live? Because I've been feeling this call for a really, really long time that I didn't want to be chained to one location and I didn't want to have to do this kind of work anymore. And I loved my clients, but there was something about it. Like I make jokes, maybe a bit of a dark joke about how doing that work nearly killed me because like energetically being around such high intensity, so many people, so much energy every day. And not only that, but like your clients are telling you everything about their life. I did not understand like energetic boundaries and I did not understand how to take care of myself. And I didn't understand why I was so like ill and so uncomfortable in my existence. And it was a lot to do with that too. So I had to become so uncomfortable in my life through a breakup, through my job being shut down, through, feeling immense burnout and feeling ill in my body. Like all of these things built up to this point. And then when I had that break to sit with it and really see it, it was like, oh, wow, I've been doing this for a really long time. And I've also wanted out of it for a very long time. So when are you going to do it?
Yeah, I really love that listened to the call, and that you were so, I'm going to say the word like tapped in to how you were feeling, and like so connected in that way. And I feel like, you say often that like everybody has the ability to be, psychic or intuitive. So we all have this capacity. Um, what does it really mean, like in a practical everyday sense? Like how do we tap into that?
Such a good question. And I love talking about this because for me, like part of my mission, I feel, is almost demystifying intuition and demystifying energy work in the sense that I am no better than anybody else or even like further or higher or whatever you want to say just because I'm tapped into this. Like this is something that I've developed. It's also something that like came a little bit more naturally to me, but I believe that intuition and mediumship and right, all of these abilities are like a muscle. And just like muscles, where you have to go to the gym to strengthen them, and everybody's body's different, where some people it comes on really quickly. Some people they need to sit with it a little bit longer, maybe make some other changes to really see these results. This is how I view intuition, to where it's something that we can exercise and develop through knowledge, skills, and practice in order to really feel that. And like I said, some people, they're much more online with it than others. And I find that for those who don't feel intuitive, it's much more subtle than what most people would assume. And it's usually just beneath the surface of all the distractions in our life and our mind and our thinking and our beliefs and so many things too. But in essence, I believe that it is a muscle that we can strengthen and we can develop.
How do you think that somebody would start to like to begin? Like where would they start to, use that muscle? Because I'm sure that so many of us in our lives have had a situation where, we look back on it and we're like, I knew this was the wrong choice, but I made it anyways. Or it's like, I knew I should have done this, or, all of these pieces. Where do we begin? How do we start to develop that like intuitive muscle?
It's such a important thing to talk about because in some ways it can be quite simple to begin. And in other ways, right, the more that we develop, we run into our programming, our beliefs, our mind, and it takes a really conscious effort to make some changes at that point. The beginning stages, in my opinion, really come down to two things. Stillness of the mind,
Mm.
and I can talk about ways of doing that,
Oh yeah.
and trusting yourself. Both of these things can bring a set of their own challenges. But when we can really sit with both of these things of stilling the mind and trusting yourself, this is where you can start to feel it and start to see it and really start to receive it. Um, Another thing I'll mention is understanding the language that your intuition speaks, because there's many different types of psychic abilities. And because of this, if we don't really understand how it might primarily come through to us, we may be missing the message. And so this is another place that I would suggest beginning. I've even created a quiz for this because I'm so passionate about introducing people to these subtleties. But essentially, we have clairaudience, which is things that you hear. We have clairsentience, which is messages that you feel. We have claircognizance, which is things that you know. And then we have the more talked about, which is clairvoyance, which is things that you see. And a lot of these things are with your inner eye, your inner ear, right? And because of it, especially with claircognizance, which is knowing, and clairsentience, which is feeling, these abilities can get really entangled in our own experience because they're so subtle. And they are probably the most common senses that most people have. So understanding that, knowing, oh, okay, yeah, I do know things or I do feel things more than others, knowing that and leaning into it while also not limiting yourself, because I'm someone who receives information in all different ways, and it can depend on the person I'm reading. It can depend on a lot of things. So that is the case for a lot of people. But starting with like, what is the most natural? What's the most dominant sense for you can really help you start to understand how these messages have been coming in and maybe where you've been missing them.
I really appreciate that you said that, like, one of the first things you have to do is like be able to get still.
Yeah.
And I feel like for so many people, that's probably like one of the biggest challenges in their lives. So of course we would
Yeah.
be so disconnected from this ability to like tap into our intuition, because so much of our life is that go, 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 and the hustle, and the, you have to have your 9 to 5, and then what's your side hustle? And then like, okay, but what are you doing on the weekends? And like, how many jobs do you have? So yeah, and then of course life on top of that, like with family and your own creative hobbies, because you're supposed to have those too, supposedly. And
Yeah.
so of course, like that would make sense that like a place of stillness would be somewhere to get to. And I know that one of the things that you offer is meditation. Will you talk a little bit about what you offer in that department, and then how that can help people find this space to then be able to explore, that other part of it all?
Yeah, definitely. Along this whole journey of discovery, I received training for becoming a meditation teacher. And it's something that when I started meditation, which was actually introduced to me through yoga, I was like, whoa, like I couldn't believe all of the things, that the colors I was seeing and the things that I was feeling and the messages I was receiving because I was so still. And so for me and like a lot of other people, meditation and a really strong meditative process can really allow for these things to reveal themselves, not just when you're meditating, but also in life, because you've created the space for it too. And so with meditation, I'm really passionate about this, as well as and I also have hypnotherapy training as well. And I don't really use it, but it influences my meditations in the way to get people into these really deep spaces. And I'm passionate about it because this is where it starts to click, and it may not be the first time that you sit down and meditate. It may take a few weeks of practice and you may have like a total breakthrough and then feel like you've gone back to reverting to the way that you were before. And it's a whole journey, but right, much like yoga, it's a practice. Meditation is something that we show up to no matter what kind of state we're in, and we lean in. Even to this day, like my meditation practice, when I really drop into that space, I kind of can't believe the feeling and the spaciousness and the stillness and the peace that it can provide. Um, I understand that a lot of people have challenges with meditation too.
Mhm.
Maybe they feel like they need to fidget or move, or they can't get into the space. And for that, I really like to say a couple of things. One is that it's not about having a perfect practice, right? It's just like showing up to a yoga class. We don't expect everybody to get into the depth of every single pose. It's the same thing with meditation. If your mind is busy, it's okay. We just observe it, see what it's up to, and hopefully we can watch it pass by. Um, but it's not about having a perfect practice. It's really just about showing up and having consistency to it and really holding the space for however you show up to it that day. The other thing I will say is incorporating movement into meditation can be really groundbreaking for people who have trouble dropping into that space. So, a walking meditation, or even having like some people call it like a worry stone. It's like a smooth stone that you can like twirl in your hands, something to add a little bit of movement to the picture. And, some people would say that's not traditional meditation, and it's not. But a meditation practice is so important for everybody that I'm willing to give adaptions for those who need a little help to get into the practice.
Well, and realistically, I feel like that is the majority of the population. Again,
Mhm.
just because of all the things that we are bombarded with in our society, I feel like even just, people, okay, let's talk about like a typical, yoga class that somebody might go to. I'm going to use the city as an example just because I feel like that's where the majority of people might live. So many times, even in Shavasana at the end, it's cut so short. We don't get the opportunity to be there and be in that like allotted time for stillness and like processing. Like there's nothing else you're supposed to be doing but just, being in that space. And so many times it gets shortened to like a minute or 2 minutes. I saw something the other day that said somebody went to an 80-minute, or it was an 88-minute practice, and they got a 2-minute Shavasana. And I was like, ugh, I was distraught. And I'm also someone who loves, like, I really love that you were like, sometimes movement before meditation can be really helpful. And I fully, believe that and agree with you on that, because one of the things that I always have appreciated, and I don't remember where I heard it along the way, but that like, well, okay, let's go Yoga Sutras, but like the purpose of asana is to, or the purpose of yoga is to still the fluctuations of the mind. And, this, like, if we follow the 8-limbed path on our way, it's like the third step is asana, the physical practice of it. And then we get to meditation. And asana and like this physical practice is a beautiful way for us to release some of the energy that's like in our bodies first so that we can sit still. So, I love that you mentioned that moving meditation aspect, or finding, I love even just the rock, like that I don't want to call it fidgeting, but I keep thinking about fidget spinners. Like, oh,
Yeah.
but like just like that smoothness of a rock, like even meditating on the sensations of the rock and like the texture, and like that's just another way to drop into the here and the now to then get into that. So
Yeah.
I actually might borrow that rock one at
Yeah,
some
you
point.
should try it.
Yeah, because I love that. And what a great way to like ground. Again, it's an item from the earth. Like I just think that that's beautiful. That's been revolutionary for me so far in this conversation. I might just have to go find a good rock. But yeah, so I love that. And even when you were talking about, people having meditations and seeing colors, I lead a lot of yoga teacher trainings, and a lot of the times in these trainings we'll discuss how our practice was. What showed up for us when we were on the mat this morning. How was our meditation? Anything, like some people have big downloads and aha moments during them, and sometimes it's not like that at all, and that's normal. But so many times students will say, oh my gosh, I saw these wild patterns and these wild colors. And so Are you saying that that's like part of getting into the like intuition aspect? Like, how does that part connect? I'm so curious.
Yeah, definitely. I would classify that as the ability of clairvoyance. And this is something that is probably one of my more dominant senses, and has been. And that began to be a lot of my experiences in the beginning of what I would say like reawakening and really coming back to all of this colors and patterns and symbols. And sometimes it's really simple, and sometimes it's like almost like a dream, and you're having this whole vision. But the thing that I really recommend for anybody who's like experiencing this is to just give it all credit, give it all weight. You can ask it questions, like, what does this represent? You can always go to Google if you want to, but if you're going to, I always teach my students to just first drop into what it means for you.
Mm.
Not just like searching for intuitive information. Let's see if you open it up what comes in. Um, but also looking into like what does the color purple mean to you, or what does it feel like to you if that's something you're seeing. And if you're really curious about general meanings and things like that, yeah, you can always look them up. I just always encourage first, what does it feel like? Because that's always going to be more accurate than what the internet will tell you something means.
I love that. I think that's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I'm quite excited to bring some of these pieces into my next meditation already. So now
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to go meditate.
And give it all credit, right? Trust it, because it all means something, and it doesn't have to mean everything, but it can be really cool when you just playfully like, okay, yeah, I saw a lot of sparkles and I saw a lot of purple and a lot of swirls. And like, did you feel it somewhere in your body? Was there a message that came with it? Maybe something that came into your consciousness, into your mind while you were doing that? Just create the openness to be curious. And when it comes to exploring these intuitive experiences, I always encourage my students to remember never to search for or dig for information. Like when we're open to receiving the information, anytime you feel like you're forcing it or you're looking for it or you're not getting anything, take a giant energetic step back, almost like you can even envision yourself in this like huge empty room and just create so much space, because the space that we can create, whether it's visualization or a feeling within ourselves, this is where the invitation for all of it to come in is. It's never like digging around inside the mind trying to figure out what else is there. It's just breathing and creating space and seeing what wants to come in to fill the space.
I love that. I love that. This is, I think, really beneficial. I like the lens to view it through like that. I love the idea of that energetic step back to give it space.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes when we do, have things showing up, we're like, okay, but what does it mean? Like I need to
Mhm.
I need to know, I need to put a label on it, I need to figure it out. It's like, well, why don't you just let it be what it is? And yeah, I like the idea of taking a step back, and then, if you want to go back in, great. But no, I
Yeah.
really like that. Thank you.
Mhm.
I'm curious because there's a lot of skepticism, and I would say even also fear around the idea of like psychic work and mediumship. And
Yeah.
so, like, what is the bridge like, even from this like intuitive aspect? Once we exercise the muscle, and once we get there, and then
Mhm.
roaming into the psychic work and the mediumship. Like, how do you help people move through that, and then also to feel safe exploring it? Because as I mentioned, some people, there can be a fear around it. I don't understand even where that comes from, but maybe you've got some insight on that too.
I've definitely got some stories of my own experiences. I would say like negative experiences of things within this world and with people I trusted, and times when I wasn't fully developed in my abilities and maybe I was very vulnerable. And so, I think that leads me into the topic of discernment and how important it is, and why in every reading and in every class, I'm always like, what you feel and what you trust and what resonates for you is always going to come first. I don't believe to be all knowing. I don't believe that I'm right. I don't believe that at all. And I encourage people to come into these spaces knowing that about me, right? So if we're talking about like skepticism when it comes to readings with me, I'm like, well, that's fine. That's okay. This isn't a space of like proving. This isn't a space of convincing. This is a space of communicating really clear, clean information that you get to choose what you do with. And so before a reading, I always tell people this, like receive whatever lands for you, let anything go that doesn't. And I'm never going to force information. Although I do believe that most of the time, if not now, it will click into place later. Um, it's fine if it doesn't. And so for anybody who's, afraid of getting a reading or doing a reading, I think it's just really important to remember that you still have your own discernment to lean on. And so it all comes back to trusting yourself. And I find that, the best readings that I do are the ones who are like, I know myself, I trust myself. I just want to know, what have you got to say? And it's a beautiful space because no one's searching or digging. And yeah, it's just an openness. So openness into that space, but bridging from intuition coming online and then stepping into psychic and mediumship abilities. I'm going to compare it to yoga again because I feel like it's a good example of how you don't just become a yoga teacher after your first yoga class, right? And most people, maybe some do, I guess, I don't know. But it's something that you really embody within yourself. And then you feel the call to share that with other people. And I would say that that is a journey that feels really aligned for me, right? It's like, we're not like, I want to become intuitive so I can be a psychic. It's more so like, we're developing our intuitive abilities for ourselves and deeper connection with ourselves. And then some people may feel that call to be like, oh, okay, I want to be of service now. And I want to be able to do this for other people. And I think that that's a way that stays really in integrity, because it kind of chooses you. It kind of chooses you. Even though you can develop your abilities, I really feel like when you're in service to other people with these things, um, it's a lot. There's a lot of things that I had to change about my life and the way that I take care of myself in order to be able to do this work. And it still is, cleansing and grounding and taking care of myself. It's like, it's a whole thing. I don't get to go, and I wouldn't, that's not who I am, but I don't get to go and just go like party on the weekends and like drink a bunch of alcohol and, you know, be around a bunch of like crazy environments and then like plug back in on a Monday and be of service because my energy is just so sensitive.
Sure. Yeah. It was like when you were
And so that's
talking
why I'm
earlier
like,
about,
yeah, if you feel the call, you're gonna feel it and it's gonna change so many things about your life in an amazing way when you have that call to be of service.
yeah,
I hope
absolutely.
that answered the question.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it just brought me back again to even when you were talking earlier about, being a hair colorist and
Yeah.
having to have these or like learn to have these emotional boundaries. Like, of course, you can't be out, wild and crazy, in the exact opposite direction of things. Like it's almost like I guess maybe you could even call it like a lifestyle.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean I don't have fun. I love
Of
music,
course.
I love going to festivals, I love going to like dance events and things. But there's a difference in the way that I participate in them now and protecting my energy and grounding my energy and cleansing my energy and, being able to enjoy myself without like substances that are going to be interfering with clarity.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because I feel like this is something kind of cool to plug in here. There was years of my life in my 20s where I would feel interested in like having a drink or like just substances that would kind of numb.
Mm-hmm.
And the more that I came home to myself, the less I enjoyed things that took me out of myself, and the more I enjoyed things that brought me into myself, right? Like amplifying my experience versus like numbing it. And I think that's a really cool thing. It's like when you meet the depths of yourself, there's nothing that you want to hide from or run from. But I also don't want to like project any kind of like idea that to be a psychic or
Sure.
to be a medium or an energy worker means that you like can't have fun and you can't go out and you can't, because it's totally not true either. And I think that's part of me just demystifying it too, is that like, yeah, you can be a normal person who takes really good care of themselves and also do this work. I'm really passionate about kind of like removing all the spiritual hierarchy stuff that exists, because yeah, there's a lot of this like purity vision that's like projected upon people who do this kind of work, and maybe even for yoga teachers too, to where they think you have to live this completely clean, holy, all in white life in order to carry that work. And um I believe that we still get to have our human experience while
Yeah.
having great care for ourselves and integrity with our clients.
I love hearing you say that because I strongly agree in the same department.
Yeah.
One of my favorite gurus, Swami Chidananda, I believe it was, he said, life is a celebration. Life is to be lived, life is to be enjoyed. So have the things, do the things, like enjoy your life and everything that it has, but like,
Mm.
also do your practice and
Yeah.
also allow yourself time to, like you were kind of saying, like reach the depths of you.
Mhm.
And so I do think it's really important to, be authentic. And like when I say authentic, I mean just be who you are. Like
Yeah.
just without having to put this like label of like, oh no, well now that I do this, I like can't do that. Or like being hard on
Yeah.
yourself. If you do choose to, do that because, life is a celebration. We're here
Yeah.
for all of it, but also like there's beauty in moderation and like an
Mhm.
awareness of what it is that takes you further down the path that feels good and what
Yeah.
takes you further away. And even like you talked about earlier with this, in order for us to get tapped into the intuition, how we have to find that stillness. Well, how can you find
Mhm.
that stillness if you're constantly searching
Yeah.
outside with the distractions and the numbing? So yeah, thank you for saying that. I
Yeah.
love that.
I think it's an important thing. I talk to my students about it a lot because, I'm teaching Reiki and I'm teaching intuitive development. And I find that there's a shift sometimes within them to where they start feeling like they need to be perfect and beating themselves up for having a day when they don't feel a strong connection, or when they're just having an off day and they can't like switch their mood. And so it's something I'm really passionate about teaching, to be like, listen, we're here having a human experience. And just because we're psychics and we're mediums and we're Reiki practitioners doesn't mean that we don't have emotions or we don't have bad days or we don't make mistakes, right? Like things are still going to happen, but we have our practices to bring us back to ourselves, not necessarily to completely remove what we're experiencing, but to bring us deeper into it sometimes. And so I like to really talk about the whole well-rounded vision of what all of this really means.
Yeah. Well, and the human experience, part of it is the mistakes. And,
Yeah.
that's how we learn, even when we're children. How many times do we fall down before we realize, like, oh, this is how I walk? Or,
Yeah.
okay, this is how I run, And yeah, so I think all part of the human experience. And I mean, gosh, if I look at my track record, I seem to like to learn all of my lessons the hard way, but at least I
Yeah.
learned them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm curious too, when it comes to Reiki, how does Reiki support intuitive development? And like maybe even you could just talk a little bit about Reiki to give us an idea of like what it is and then how it all kind of, connects back into this whole, connecting to yourself and to your intuition and, how does it support everything?
Yeah. So I would definitely say that, when it comes to receiving a Reiki attunement versus a session, right? Both are introducing you to universal life force energy. And that is the energy that you are essentially channeling when you're connected to Reiki. But I find that I would say receiving Reiki level 1 attunement is where I see people really kind of come online
Mm.
with their sensitivities to energies, to messages, and things like this. And I wouldn't say it's because Reiki increases intuition, I would say it's because it connects you deeper to the energies around you. And again, creating that stillness and kind of coming back to yourself. And so I really find that people kind of have this awakening, if you will. Although I wouldn't say it's something that everyone has, it's something I experienced and it's something I see a lot in my students, that connecting to this energy, this universal life force energy, becoming this clear channel, right? We're not healers, that's we're channeling the healing, we're not cultivating the healing energy. So it's not something that's like coming from within us. And a lot
Right.
of people have like misconceptions about what healing and things like that is. But when it comes to Reiki, it's an ancient Japanese tradition and technique where you use symbols and you're channeling universal life force energy. And as you're channeling this, whether this is for yourself, which level 1 is really about learning how to do this for you, or whether it's for others, it moves through your entire being before it comes out of your palms. There's different symbols that you use for different intentions, although you don't need to use them in order to channel Reiki. But with level 1, I really feel that there's a 21-day period after their first attunement. I say first attunement because I actually do 3. I was inspired by someone's teacher who does 3 attunements, and I was like, that feels really good. Like, let's do that, because after 1, yes, you're attuned. But with 3, you're really able to support somebody in troubleshooting and deepening their connection and really assuring that you're doing what you can as a teacher to build that confidence. And so, through these attunements, after your first one, you begin a 21-day self practice where you are practicing Reiki on yourself. And depending on what level you're on, maybe you're practicing the symbols too for a full 21 days. And so I feel like that 21-day practice of receiving and channeling Reiki, stillness within yourself, again back to that stillness topic, I feel like that creates so much shift within people, not just because you're receiving the energy of Reiki, which is moving through your entire being for 21 days as you're getting to know it, but also because it's bringing you into that stillness and bringing you into yourself. When we talk about like, what does universal life force energy do, what does Reiki energy do? It does a lot of things. It can clear, it can rebalance, it can harmonize, it can ground, it can uplift. And that's just like on an energetic level. We're not even talking about how it can affect physical experiences and physical pain or even emotional. And so it's really this big, well rounded thing, right? And so I always tell my students, within receiving their first Reiki attunement, that our job is to just be a clear channel for universal life force energy to move through us. And then we trust the energy. We're not controlling it, even though we may use symbols or may use our hands on certain areas of the body. We're not like, I'm doing this to do this one thing. We're like, okay, I am a clear and open and grounded channel for the Reiki to do what it needs to do. And it does a lot of different things when we step out of the way. But I find that people, because they're coming home to themselves in that experience, and they're finding stillness and a practice that brings them in with themselves and receiving Reiki for 21 days straight, it can really clear out a lot of the noise. It can clear out a lot of the things that are kind of sticky or maybe in the way, and it allows all of your energy, not just intuition and um, your chakra system and your physical system and your emotions to flow more freely. But all of those things coming together, I think, really leads to people having a deeper connection to themselves, therefore having a deeper connection to their intuition.
Something that I'm noticing a lot through our conversation is that we keep coming back to this stillness aspect.
Yeah.
And it seems like such a simple thing, but it seems like that might be like a common like block or a challenge or something to move through in order to get to like these intuitive or these psychic abilities, like even in Reiki, like you're saying, like to get through that, we or to get to channel that energy, there has to be like a level of stillness and being fully present. um do you think that there's like other, like what other blocks or challenges, and maybe I'll call them, would you name to be something that you see kind of maybe hinders people when you see them trying to access these like intuitive or psychic abilities?
Yeah. This is actually a really good topic to bring up because, we talk about how stillness is like a gateway into connecting deeper with ourselves, but it's also noticing the subtleties because the intuitive messages that are already coming through, we're just not seeing them a lot of the time. So when we get into the path of intuitive development, the stillness and connecting with ourselves allows us to actually receive them, feel them, hear them, experience them in a way that maybe we haven't before. So that's like why the stillness is so important. It's so that we can actually receive it. But when it comes into challenges, I want to talk a little bit about those who have experienced trauma, because this is a big part of the conversation that I've had when it comes to learning to trust yourself. And this is why, like in one of my development programs, it's not just about like learn how to be intuitive. It's like learn to trust yourself, because this is one of the biggest challenges that I feel people have besides coming to stillness. It's trusting themselves, trusting what comes through. And something I want to bring up about that when it comes to trauma and life experiences, which all of us have some shape or form of, is understanding ourselves and understanding what our triggers are and understanding what our responses are. And so this can be a pretty interesting journey, but for those who are self-aware, maybe you already understand what is very triggering. You already understand how you react to things. Can really help you understand when your mind is coming into play, when it's a response to something versus intuition. And this is where it can get kind of complicated. I had somebody ask me recently, like, do you work with people with trauma, and like, how do you help them like trust themselves, and how do you help them overcome the triggers? And I'm like, well, the biggest thing for anyone to understand about themselves is what triggers you and how do you react. And becoming the observer of your mind and your thoughts versus identifying with it. Because intuition, while it may be something we do receive in this area, through vision or through hearing or through knowing, there is a difference in the way that intuition comes through in comparison to fear, in comparison to thought patterns, in comparison to a reaction. And so, that is something that I would encourage everyone who's on an intuitive journey to know is like, know yourself, know your triggers, know the way that you respond, and also understand that intuition is usually not going to come through as this like crazy red alert, like scary, like big fear message. Intuition's usually really subtle and quiet, even if it's about something serious.
Which makes it hard to recognize.
Yeah,
Right?
because it's loud. It's
Yeah.
loud. Think of your mind and your triggers or anxiety and things like that as like this huge alarm bell. Okay. It's like it's so loud that you can't think about anything else because it's just in your face, right? That's anxiety. That's your thinking mind. That's your responses and your triggers.
Right.
And if we're comparing that to intuition, intuition is like a whisper.
Mm.
Intuition is a whisper. It's like, maybe you should go do that thing. And then you're like, what? Why should I do that? Right? Then the mind comes online and starts
Yeah.
questioning these things. So be aware of that too, of
Mm.
when your mind comes into the picture versus when the intuition has a whisper. Um, that's where I see a lot of when we get into like further development, this is where it's like, okay, I'm getting intuitive messages, but I'm also getting anxious messages. Like, what do I do with it? Yeah. Answer is understand yourself, know yourself, and don't listen to your mind.
Oh yeah, my
Talk
mind
about
wants to
trusting
talk me out of
yourself. We're
everything.
not trusting the anxiety. We're not trusting the anxious mind. Okay, we're trusting the whisper.
Like this is just really beautiful. It's just funny how I feel like everything keeps coming back to this idea of like stillness,
Yeah.
which is just so wild. I didn't expect our conversation to have that big of an impact for me in that capacity, but I'm just really like kind of soaking that in and like processing it. Um,
Yeah.
because yeah, I just didn't, I don't know what I expected, but I'm really grateful for that. Um,
Yeah.
I think it's really, amazing that you have these like mentorship programs, um, which you've got. Okay, so tell me all the things. You have mentorship programs, And when
Mhm.
you're doing these mentorships, it's mentorship for the mediumship or like just all psychic abilities?
So I do them separately. So
Okay.
I do Reiki trainings and attunements, which
Mhm.
I do each level in like a 1 month long
Nice.
container. We have 3
Okay.
attunements. There's like lots of different trainings and education on the chakra system because my experience with receiving my Reiki attunement, it was like, here's your attunement, here's your manual, here's your certificate, bye. And I was like, wait, what?
Wait.
Like what am I supposed to do with all this? And so I was like, let's create a space to where we can like work with each other in a way that creates confident
Mhm.
and more grounded, well-rounded Reiki
Mhm.
practitioners. So I have that. And then I also have intuitive development. So in Awaken and Align is like your foundation. So you're learning a lot of knowledge about energies, about symbols, about, all of the different psychic senses. There's tons of meditations within this space, nervous system regulation, practices to help you develop and strengthen that muscle.
Mhm.
So that's like your foundation, right? So it's not just for beginners, even though it's appropriate for them. It's also for people who are like, I know a little bit, but I don't know a lot about it, you know? And
Absolutely.
we go into the depth of it so that you can continue, right? Like it's a 3 month long program, but in reality, these are things you're going to keep coming back to for a very, very long time because it's knowledge and practices you're going to keep using. And then the next step after that is Activate, which is a program I haven't fully launched yet. And this is for people who are like, okay, I'm intuitive and I know how to tap into it, but I want to either do this professionally or just like really step up into the ways that I'm able to do this work. And that's a space where we go a lot deeper into the practices. And again, we're really battling all of those, the mind and the programming and all the things, to go deeper into to trusting the ability and strengthening that muscle. And that is also where I incorporate more mediumship. We do an intro into mediumship and Awaken and Align to get people open to it, to have these experiences. But that's where we go into further development.
Got it. Do
Yeah.
you like I know that you've been living in Peru for what now, 2 years in the Sacred Valley?
Almost, it's a year and a few months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing. Are you doing any of these programs in person or is everything online?
It's so funny you say that, actually. I'm just now opening myself up to doing Reiki attunements in person here.
Mm.
I actually have my first one in person today.
Okay.
So it's funny that you asked, but yeah, it's something I've been doing remote work for years and years, and that's my primary and that's my focus. My programs are in that space because everything's inside like an online program, like a course. It's like
Mm.
all your materials are in here, all your meditations. We have a group page where everyone can connect and ask questions and all this good stuff. And so I really, really appreciate this little online sphere that has everything in it. And so even the ones that I'm doing in person, you're still getting inside of all of the online trainings, all this stuff. We're just doing some in-person attunements. And I do plan on doing some group Reiki attunements as well, and maybe some workshops on intuition because I'd be curious to just kind of see, what that can open up. And I feel like these conversations are so helpful, and these introductions to this work and to this energy and to intuition is something I'm really passionate about.
Absolutely. And I feel like you know, I don't know if there was any like intuitive piece that led you to be in Peru, but like you are in a very, energetically, I don't know if strong's the right word, but like you are in a spiritual center. You're in the Sacred Valley in Peru. And I'm curious
Yeah.
if that has like impacted anything for you like since being there.
Yeah. Just back to what you said about like, did you feel an intuitive call? I would say it was a very pure intuitive call
Yeah.
because I was even kind of questioning it with my mind, being like, why do I want to go there? And I was just like, you just got to go there.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know why. To be honest with you, I didn't really even know a whole lot about the area that I came to. I thought I was going to be here for a month, and it opened up so many things. Community, it opened up reconnecting with music even further because I started in Brazil, and that's like where things really, really ticked off for me. Um, yeah, I'll talk about that a little bit, I guess, because it's relevant. But I went from the US, which I was living in a van for a year, traveling around. Then I grounded in Northern California. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to drink ayahuasca in the Amazon with the Yawanoa in Brazil. And I was like, I know myself, and I know that I've been gearing up for this for many, many years of my life, and I'm going to go one way. And so I did. And I didn't know what was going to be after Brazil. I was there for a couple of months, felt the call to come here. Ironically, I was actually supposed to come here in the beginning of 2020. And the day before my flight was supposed to come here, everything got canceled and shut down. And I was like, okay, it's not the time.
Yep.
So I was like, okay, I got the call again to come here. And I was like, okay, I'm going to come. And it opened up so many things in such a beautiful way. And I had already been doing this thing of just like letting intuition lead my life. Obviously, I've created a life for myself where I can do that in a large way, right? And so I was like, let's just see where it goes. And it's been really beautiful. It's opened up a lot of connections, reconnecting me with music. I met my now partner here, which I was like totally not expecting that either. And yeah, a lot of different levels of myself too, with continuing to work with medicine, continuing to work with music. It's a very intense place energetically. I literally live on top of a mountain, like a 15-minute hike away from like the closest little town center. Like very Peruvian experience. It's beautiful. I have an amazing view, but I joke all the time about how like I literally need to live on top of a mountain so that I can like separate myself from like all of the energies.
That's your
Um,
energetic step back.
yeah. And I go into town all the time, but there are times when I'm like, okay, I need a couple of days in the sanctuary, to just be with the mountains. But it's such a special place. All of the mountains have an energy and have a name, and you feel that when you're here, especially being intuitive. And a lot of people come here who are on a spiritual path or who are working with plant medicines or just very curious and open. And so there can be a lot of different energies floating around, which like sometimes can be really intense. But again, you set your boundaries and you contain your energy, and that doesn't mean that your heart's not open, and it's been really a good practice for me here because it has not always been easy for me, but it's been a very good practice for me to learn how to stay grounded, how to stay boundaried, but also still how to stay open. And this is something that I'm still practicing and learning the balance to and understanding, how can you manage your energy in this space without like shutting yourself down or being so open that you're like tired or you're drained or you're, experiencing things that are unpleasant.
Sure. I mean, with that said too, then, for people who do feel called to like go further down this path,
Yeah.
what would be your advice on like how they can start to like integrate intuitive or energy work into their daily lives or even into their careers? Like if they're not in, this more spiritual aspect already, if they're, previous Courtney in as a hair colorist, or if they're previous Michelle as a retail banker,
Yeah.
how can they start to integrate that into their lives?
I would say that my advice is to just start. And what I mean by that is I think a lot of times we project these ideas about like we need to be ready or be in a certain place or something to like begin the journey. And I would say don't listen to that and just start. If you're feeling called to get your Reiki level 1 attunement, remember it's for you. You don't have to want to be a Reiki practitioner for other people. A lot of people feel that call and it's amazing and it's so beautiful to see. But what it can do just for yourself to learn how to be your own healer, how to receive your own healing. It's really beautiful. And that doesn't mean that you can't go have sessions with other people. I'm a psychic, a medium, an energy worker, a Reiki master, all this stuff, and I still will have sessions with other people. And, I'll still work on myself. And when it comes to intuition and things like this and wanting to incorporate it into your whole life, like this is part of the reason why I created this like free quiz and free meditation to help you discover your dominant psychic intuitive sense, is because I wanted people to have the invitation to explore it playfully and to just try and just see and like just see what comes through. It's a nice way to introduce yourself. So I would say just curiously explore it in whatever capacity you feel called to. And don't overthink it too much. If you feel called to get Reiki attuned, do it. If you feel called to develop your intuition, do it. It can just be for you. I think sometimes we get really hung up on this idea of like, oh, but I'm a hair colorist. Like,
Mm.
I don't want to be like a full-time psychic, or I don't want to be a full-time Reiki practitioner. And at the time of my life where I did these things, I didn't either. So remove the pressure, let it be curious and playful. And if you feel called for any of those things, just start exploring meditations, YouTube videos. You don't have to dive straight into an intuitive development program or straight into an attunement if you don't feel that. Just start seeing what's there for you. Meditation classes, yoga classes, and any spaces of stillness and really exploring spirituality. Just a level of openness is what I would suggest.
I love that. Honestly, this has been such an enjoyable conversation for me, and I've never left a conversation with someone so badly and just wanted to go and sit. And I swear to you, I'm going to go and get a rock. Like, I'm already like looking at a pile of them outside from my window here, and I'm like, coming for you. So
Yeah.
yeah, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for this. This has been really lovely. I
Thank
will
you.
definitely be getting some links from you about those quizzes that you mentioned, because
Oh,
I would
cool.
love to be able to share them with our listeners.
I
And then
would
also
love to share
personally
it.
diving in on those.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
Yeah, so
Now,
fun.
is there any final piece, anything that, we should know, or any like final message you want to leave with the people before we go?
Just want to come back to my belief that we're all intuitive and that intuition is a muscle and that anyone can become a Reiki practitioner or an energy worker. And don't let your mind or your present reality stop you from exploring yourself and your own spiritual journey, because there's so much play that comes in when you decide to just be open to what life has to show you. And I know that it can feel a little scary or intimidating for some people. And I promise you that it's not as black and white as you might think. And I still make mistakes, even as a psychic and a medium and an energy worker. There are still things that I have to experience in life. And I don't get to have this like free pass to just know everything. Our intuition is here to nudge us in the right direction. The right direction. Air quotes, because I don't really know if I believe in right and wrong in its fullest capacity. In some ways, yes, of course. But it's not so black and white, staying in alignment. I think that's what the job of the intuition is. And so don't be afraid of it, because, even if you think that you're going to have all knowing and every bit of information, you probably won't. And you'll know what you need to know, and your intuition will guide you. And it's a beautiful journey to just know that you're guided without having to know every single thing and every secret of the world either.
That's amazing. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for this. Again, this whole conversation has been fantastic. And it's just so nice to be able to chat with you again. I mean, it's been a while since we have, lucky for us, we're still friends on social media, and we have that. And I see your stuff all the time. And I really love what you share. And I love your outlook on things. And I just find you so easy to talk to. And again, maybe it's that authenticity piece, but I think that anyone that gets to speak with you, or even like, follows you on social media, I think that they'll also see that too, that authentic Courtney that I met in Mexico years ago.
Well, thank you so much. I really feel exactly the same about you. And so when you asked about this, I was like, yes, absolutely. Like, this feels
You were just perfect
fun.
for this, You were just the perfect kind of person to have this conversation with. So it had to happen, Yeah, I love
I
it.
really enjoyed it.
No, likewise. Thank you so much again for being here.